In the quaint town of Millville, Sarah, a dedicated mother, lived with her son Jake. Their home was a haven of love and laughter, and Jake, with his infectious energy and curiosity, filled each day with joy. But one night, under the glow of the moon, something shifted. Jake began to exhibit an odd, almost evil gleam in his eyes that seemed to harbor a secret. It was as if he was privy to a world unseen, a realm that existed just beyond the veil of the ordinary. His laughter, once a melody that reverberated through their home, now carried a strange undertone, an echo of something unspoken. Sarah couldn't help but notice these subtle changes since her son, once a lively child who found wonder in the simplest of things, was now drawn to the mysteries of the night. She'd find him standing by the window, his gaze lost in the moonlit expanse, his mind seemingly wandering in thoughts too profound for a child his age. His playtime became filled with peculiar activities. His toys were left untouched, replaced by shadows that seemed to dance along the walls of his room. Sarah would often catch him whispering to those shadows, a one-sided conversation that filled the room with an eerie silence. But Sarah, ever the doting mother, dismissed these oddities as the whims of a curious child. After all, children often had their phases, their moments of fantasy and make-believe. It was perhaps just Jake's way of exploring the world around him, of understanding the mysteries that life presented. Yet a part of her couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. There was an undercurrent of unease, a sense of dread that crept into her heart, but she chose once again to ignore it, and hoping to believe in the innocence of her son. After all, Jake was just a child, his world untouched by the darkness that lurked beyond their home. But as days turned into weeks, the peculiarities in Jake's behavior only grew. Sarah found herself in a perpetual state of unease, her maternal instincts alert to the strange activities her son had started to indulge in. Jake was no longer the child she knew. His laughter was now replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to echo with unspoken secrets. His fascination with the night deepened even further. He would often be found standing by the window, his eyes reflecting the moonlight, his gaze lost in the vast expanse of the darkness outside. Sarah's worry turned into a gnawing fear when she walked into Jake's room one night. The sight that greeted her was one she would never forget. A subtle, unearthly glow emanated from Jake's skin, casting an ethereal light in the room. As she moved closer, her heart pounded in her chest, her breath hitched. It was as if Jake was brimming with an energy that was not of this world, a force that seemed to pulsate in rhythm with his heartbeat. The walls of his room bore strange symbols, etched in a language foreign to her, all over his walls and ceiling. It was a chilling sight, one that sent shivers down her spine. Sarah stood there, her mind grappling with the horrifying truth that was slowly unfolding before her. The reality she had known, the life she had shared with her son was imploding, revealing a terrifying secret. Her son, her Jake, was not entirely human. His veins coursed with an energy that defied human comprehension. His eyes held a secret she could not comprehend. As she stood there, enveloped in the cold, haunting silence of the room, Sarah realized that their lives would never be the same again. Unsettled and desperate for answers, Sarah delved into Millville's folklore. She found herself drawn towards the town's ancient tales, whispered from generation to generation. Stories of beings that walked among them, concealed within the cloak of humanity. Each tale seemed like a piece of a larger puzzle, a puzzle that was entwined with Jake's sudden transformation. Father Thomas, a local priest, well-versed in the lore of Millville and the mysteries it held. He was a man of deep faith, his life devoted to combating the unseen forces that lurked in the shadows. Intrigued by Sarah's tale, he found himself drawn into the enigma that was Jake. Father Thomas, armed with his knowledge of the ancient lore, embarked on a journey into the heart of the mystery. He sifted through Millville's history, his eyes scanning the pages for answers. He discovered that Millville was not just an ordinary town, it was a confluence of realms, a place where the human and the demonic intersected. The priest's research revealed a lineage, a bloodline that bore the legacy of both worlds. This lineage manifested in peculiar ways, often lying dormant, only to emerge under the right circumstances, such as the glow of a full moon, or the innocent curiosity of a child. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as Father Thomas relayed his findings. Her son was not a victim of some inexplicable disease. He was a demonic descendant of a lineage that was as ancient as it was terrifying, a lineage that bore ancient malevolence. As the truth unfolded, it was as if a veil had been lifted from Sarah's eyes. She now saw Jake not as her son, but as the demon he had been for a while. Millville was a convergence point of the human and demonic realms. Sarah's further search into how to get her Jake back led her to a gathering known as the Lunar Nexus. The Lunar Nexus was a congregation of individuals who had experienced similar phenomena. It was a sanctuary of sorts, a place where the inexplicable was not merely accepted but understood. Sarah, desperate and determined, pleaded her case before the Nexus. Her voice, laden with a mother's anguish, painted a vivid picture of Jake's transformation. She spoke of the nocturnal activities, the luminescence in his veins, and the cryptic symbols that adorned his room. Her words echoed through the silence, resonating with those who had faced similar horrors. At the heart of the Lunar Nexus, a seasoned priest named Cecil listened intently. His eyes, hardened by years of battling the supernatural, reflected a blend of intrigue and apprehension. He was a veteran in confronting the demonic, his faith his only shield against the dark forces that lurked in the shadows. Father Cecil agreed to help Sarah, drawn by the echoes of ancient tales and the chilling narrative of Jake's transformation. He knew the path ahead was fraught with danger, the stakes higher than any he had faced before. The priest was stepping into a world that defied the laws of nature, where the line between the human and the demonic was blurred. Back in the dimly lit confines of Sarah's home, Father Cecil confronted Jake. The atmosphere was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. The room was lit only by the eerie glow emanating from Jake, casting long dancing shadows that seemed to writhe in response to an unseen force. Father Cecil, armed with his faith and a tattered Bible, braced himself for the imminent confrontation. The air was electrified as Father Cecil invoked sacred verses, attempting to banish the darkness that enveloped the child. The room trembled with the clash of divine and demonic, a battle of wills that would determine Jake's fate. As the priest's words echoed through the room, it was clear that the confrontation had only just begun. But Jake, powered by an ancient malevolence, resisted the sanctified intervention. The air around him seemed to throb with a pulse of its own, a dark rhythm that echoed the sinister beat of his heart. Father Cecil, his voice a shaky whisper against the pulsating energy, continued his prayers, his faith unwavering. But Jake's reaction was swift and brutal. Like a shadow brought to life, he sprang from his bed, a gleaming knife appearing in his hand as if conjured from thin air. The room echoed with a sickening thud as the blade found its mark, slicing through Father Cecil's throat with a ruthless precision. The priest gasped, falling to the floor, his lifeblood pooling around him. The only sound left in the house was the rhythmic dripping of blood onto the wooden floor. Jake, the knife still clutched in his small hand, turned to face the one person who loved him unconditionally, his mother Sarah. Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest, could only watch in horror as her son approached her, his once bright eyes now black and dead, an echo of the otherworldly energy that flowed within him. But it was the knife, the blood-stained knife hanging by his side, that held her captive. Then, in a blur of motion, Jake lunged at her. The cold steel of the knife plunged into her heart, stealing away the warmth of her life. The light in her eyes flickered and dimmed, her body slumping to the floor beside the lifeless form of Father Cecil. Jake withdrew the knife, dropping it beside his now dead mother. His gaze lingered on her for a moment, a faint trace of the boy he once was flickering in his eyes. Then, turning away, he walked out of the house, his small figure swallowed by the darkness of the night.